So with this idea that Kaioken could remain relevant for longer, is it still the time of Krillin? Hey folks, MasakoX here. Before you deem this story as something that could not possibly happen, do hear me out. Yes, I know I have my April Fool what-ifs where weird and wacky stories reside, but this one does have some sort of logical leg to stand on at least. Krillin, the character who's probably the most enthusiastic and plucky member of the Dragon team, managed to pluck himself up further initiative to ask the dragon to be like his best friend and strongest being on the planet, and Shenron took it literally. Despite the idea of changing one being into another being seems a little up in the air, it's never really been explored in the show, and so therefore it is certainly something we can at least venture a guess as to how it could work. Krillin being a Saiyan? Well, it's been super so far. In the last part, we had Goku and Krillin turning into the golden form at the same time, both lamenting the second passing of Gohan for slightly different reasons. Frieza had slain Gohan for halting his quest for immortality, but what he got in return was something that would ironically end his life. Who is the one to take him down exclusively? Well, it was Krillin, mainly, choosing to do something rather bold, dramatic, and heroic by hurling himself and the Emperor into his own planet-ending attack before it could hit the planet's surface below. The only two beings on Namek to bite it were the one aforementioned. With Namek protected, our team set about restoring it thanks to the likes of Porunga and Shenron back on Earth. But since Krillin had passed once before, he would have to wait for the Namekian orbs to recharge before he could be brought back to life. But he didn't actually waste this time. It didn't mean that the little guy was sitting on his laurels. No. He made his way to Snake Way and flew his way straight to King Kai's place to train as hard as possible, figuring out how Super Saiyan worked at the same time. In turn, King Kai got to see this power up close and was inspired by the now Saiyan's attitude and determination. In fact, this set up a rather fun dynamic between them. After 4 months of training in a constant 10 times gravity, Krillin had managed to get down his Super Saiyan transformation. In that time, he had been able to make it so he could change into it with minimal struggle and keep total control of his mind. Brilliant! He had been in regular contact also with Goku on Earth, all through King Kai's antennae, reporting his findings and techniques so that his friend wouldn't be left out in the cold or falling behind. "It wouldn't be fair if I were to get stronger than you, buddy," said Krillin tongue-in-cheek. King Kai found this rather intriguing.
"Wow, I've never seen a Saiyan actively being selfless and helpful to a potential rival."
"Remember, I'm not like other Saiyans, King Kai."
Yes, I keep forgetting."
The two got on quite well, much more amiable and laid back than it would be when Goku was around and just dossing around and whatnot. So, what happens with Kaioken? Well, King Kai was able to look at how Super Saiyan burnt through energy, and felt like it could be beneficial to emulate some of that into Kaioken, to make it more accessible and efficient, more forgiving on the body. I mean, granted, he would have liked to have had more time to work on it, having years and years and years on it to actually do it properly. But fortunately, he had already the basics down, and Krillin was very good with feedback, so this was a case of some decent refinement for now. Let's just say that at the moment, Kaioken won't utterly destroy your stamina as much as before. The time came for Krillin to return home, and after his months of training, he wanted to see what his Super Saiyan power could make of the journey back to the check-in station. When the Namekians had wished for him to be returned to life, and his halo from up top disappeared from view, he was ready to go. He considered that to be his signal to go. "Thanks, King Kai. This has been fun. Hope you can get some rest. Later, Bubbles. Later, Gregory." And with that, the little guy powered up to Super Saiyan and flew right off the planet. As King Kai was watching this spectacle, he suddenly got a worrying pang of panic from his antenna. At first, he wasn't sure what it was, but then, when he regained his composure and actually focused on it, he realized the significance of this. He was shocked. There was an angry energy heading toward Earth, and it felt eerily like Frieza's.
"No way. He's woken out of retirement. And Krillin, I hope you get back there as fast as you can."
Back on Earth, Kami had felt this too. He reported this to the rest of the Dragon team, and they were utterly terrified. Goku, though, was actually sort of curious to see a Frieza-like power coming their way. He was keen to test out his power, as well as the little bit of good news tacked onto the report.
"I'm about to meet Krillin at King Yama's office. He's making very good time thanks to his new power.
Yeah, nodded Goku. That's Super Saiyan for ya. It's amazing.
It bothers me somewhat that you are deeming what was once a horrifying force of evil in the galaxy as amazing. But I understand where you're coming from. Be sure to be ready for this power. We need all hands on deck. This is not a game, Goku. Remember that.
Minutes later, Krillin had arrived at King Yama's, and Kami had only just arrived. He had barely time to gather his bearings, in fact, when Krillin was right there, waving to Kami, being pleased to see him. Hey, Kami! Took you long enough! The smart Alec had been there for a few minutes already, talking with Yama about the power and how he had actually set a new record for traversing Snake Way, something that was once an arduous path that took centuries to cross.
It doesn't really count if you flew over the path, Krillin, but nevertheless, I'm glad this power is now contained and is a force for good. I remember that power from thousands of years ago. That was a very busy day indeed.
He shuddered at the memory of all that really difficult paperwork. When Yama had been satisfied that Krillin had once again returned to life, he and Kami vanished back to Earth, the Saiyan rushing to Goku's side as well as his friends. When he leapt off of the lookout, a pang of energy struck him like a freight train. Whoa! That's almost like Frieza's energy! Only more mature and stronger. Man, it's almost like we're facing Frieza at his full power after all. When he got to the group, they were thrilled to see him, of course, glad to have some sense of relief and good news on this side, rather than this precarious and uncertain day that had panned out thus far. Vegeta had returned not long ago either, and was sporting a rather interesting pink shirt and yellow trousers combo. Hey, Vegeta, said Krillin with him doing his best to stifle his laughter.
One word about my clothes, freak, and you'll be sorry.
Well, at least something on you is yellow, muttered Krillin, clearly digging at the observation that the prince had seemingly not yet found out Super Saiyan.
What was that?
Vegeta barked, but before he could continue this, he felt the energy spike reach the top of the sky.
It's cold.
Cold? Vegeta, it's sunny out, said Yamcha. It's not cold at all.
Not that cold, you imbecile! King Cold. Frieza's father.
Krillin looked up to the sky and nodded. Huh. Well, that makes sense from what I felt earlier. The ship landed on the ground, and out from it exited a rather striking-looking individual. He looked like somewhat Frieza in his second form, but all the more imposing and all the more purple. He carried a rather regal and confident aura about him, unlike the rather maniacal and desperate attitude of his apparent son they faced on Namek. Cold walked off the ramp and touched the ground of the Earth, and just took it in.
So, this is Earth, the home of the beings that murdered my boy. You are lucky I'm rather intrigued as to how you did it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered landing here and blown just simply your planet up from orbit. Isn't that generous of me?
He then spotted Vegeta in his pink shirt.
Goodness, Vegeta. I expected to see you here, but not like that.
Vegeta cursed under his breath, and as he hadn't gotten Super Saiyan, it wouldn't be wise to face Cold right now.
Got nothing to say? That's definitely a shocker. Shame. All right, to business. Which one of you killed my son?
He looked at the group and then spotted Goku and Krillin.
You two. You look ready for combat. Like you knew I was coming.
Krillin stepped forward, him very keen to snuff this one out too, after having been the one to kill Frieza. That would be me! I did it! Goku was a little unnerved at his friend's forwardness. Krillin, buddy, what's the point of hiding it? We did it, and we would do it again if we had the chance. Let's be real, Goku. Frieza needed to be stopped. The galaxy needs to heal, free from his tyranny and suffering, like we saw in Namek. If you think you can stop us, then you're wrong. We hadn't even gone all out against him. Cold reeled backward at the sheer arrogance of these monkeys.
As I thought. Monkeys being monkeys, as per usual. Well, if it is a fight that you want,
Cold powered up.
that's exactly what you will get.
Well, King Cold had no idea of the Super Saiyan power since his son wasn't around to tell him, so this is going to be fun. However, our heroes were stopped when a shout came from the distance. Hey! Cold!
Is that one of your friends trying to be all stealth-like? Well, if so, they very much fail at being sneaky by shouting like that.
Goku and Krillin then looked at each other and were utterly bewildered. Who could that be? Everyone they knew who could fight was already here. Who was that person? And why couldn't they sense their energy? Nothing was coming from them at all. The blonde hair could be seen though from afar, and it caught Krillin's attention.
Another Super Saiyan? Vegeta scoffed. Great. More competition. And a woman to boot.
Bulma gave him a nasty scowl. Less of that, non-Super Saiyan. Vegeta grimaced, but chose to ignore the slight from Bulma. He quite liked the cut of her jib, to be fair. The woman then disappeared from view, and there was no trace of them. Cole blinked.
Well, that happened. What was the point of that, then? If they weren't even going to fight me. What a disappointment. Well, I guess I'll have to settle for you two.
Cold stopped talking and started to cough up blood. He looked down and saw a small hand sticking out of his torso. Don't worry, said the woman. I ain't going anywhere. She then pulled her arm out and then blasted the back of King Cold, causing him to topple to the ground. He was stinging with the pain, but the woman just didn't care, flicking her arm clean of the blood, and looked at the group for a second before smiling. Krillin's jaw dropped. She was beautiful. She noticed this, her smile growing a little, before snapping back to her more stern first impression. Well, go on then. Finish him off. Krillin snapped out of his daze and, with the desire to impress, lifted his hand to Cold's face, him lifting it to meet his hand. Sorry, Cold. Not interested in playing games. Krillin powered up to Super Saiyan instantly, shocking everyone around bar Goku. But before we could hear his laments again, Cold was staring into the golden power with utter horror.
How is that possible?
I could tell you, but what'll be the point? You're gonna die, Krillin said with sinister tones before blasting the king away. Suddenly, a rush of troops stormed out of the ship. But as soon as they saw the likes of the woman, Goku and Krillin, their scouters exploding off of their faces, they stopped in their tracks. The woman simply shook her head. Trust me, boys. You don't want to get in the middle of this. Go home. They didn't need telling twice. Sure enough, they ran back inside, the ramp protracted, and the ship got out of there sharpish. With the sight of the ship now gone from their view and nothing left of King Cold, the woman sighed deeply. Well, that was satisfying. Good job, boys. She looked at the rest of the group, them utterly unsure as to who she was. You two, a word if you don't mind. I've got something to tell you. Whatever you got to say to us, you can say it here. She shook her head again. Not this, Goku. This is serious. You know his name? Muttered Krillin. I know yours too, Krillin. Krillin blushed profusely. She smiled again before motioning to a clearing not too far from where the ship stood, out of earshot from everyone else. Well, almost everyone. The woman then spoke of her identity and place of origin. My name is Lazuli, and I come from the future. The future? Both the Saiyans said as one. That's right. Get used to it, buckos. You're going to be hearing plenty of that from now on. She then went on to explain how she came back in time, with the help of future Bulma and the remains of Capsule Corp. Dr. Bulma has been the only thing keeping society going relatively smoothly. There's not many of your crew left to fight. The only survivors are myself, her boy, and Gohan. My brother was most recently lost, slain at the hands of the unstoppable killing machine set loose by Dr. Gero. Wait, Dr. Gero? Blinked Goku. I heard that name before. Does he work for the Red Ribbon Army? Lazuli nodded. Got it in one. Dr. Gero, in his journey to avenge his fallen comrades and his own son, created a collection of androids set about raising society to the ground in order to begin anew in his vision. But instead of prosperity and a new world order, all that he got with his latest creation was utter chaos and bedlam in its wake, all to counter the Super Saiyan menace he deemed travesty of nature. Super Saiyan? You mean this thing, whatever it is stronger than that? Krillin trembled with fear. Yes. 4 years from now, Gero let loose a giant automaton in the likeness of his lost son, programmed originally to kill Son Goku. She turned to Goku when she said that, but his programming was corrupted in the rush to prepare. That thing did kill Goku, but it didn't stop killing after that. It even killed its own creator in the end, Gero trying to control it as best he could. But ironically, his own son destroyed him. Earth is not a safe place where I come from. It hasn't been safe for decades. It can sense energy, whereas we can't sense its energy. It's the ultimate decimator. Krillin then asked where Lazuli came in all of this. Dr. Bulma rescued us. She looked awkwardly at them both, choosing now to omit some information for the moment. Both me and my brother Lapis were recruited to stop this thing, but we could barely make a dent in it. In the end, my brother was torn apart by it not too long ago. That's when Dr. Bulma set about going back in time to perhaps fix things, fix time, or at least stop a timeline from facing our own fate. Lazuli finished speaking, and Krillin and Goku looked seriously at her, taking on board what she had said. So what do you need from us? They said. Train. Train as hard as you can. Make sure that monstrosity never sees the light of day. You've got 4 years, boys. I gotta go. Krillin then rushed to her and grabbed her hand. Wait! Will we see you again? Her expression softened as she looked at his frantic face. Maybe. I'll bring back up 2, perhaps. If this creation shows up here, you're gonna need as much help as you can get. She used her other hand to gently lift Krillin's off and waved goodbye as she flew away from view. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Do you think the same androids from the future will turn up in this timeline? How will Lazuli figure in all of this? And why her original name of all things? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!